Tau, Taigway, Tariku, Taimautia, Usa, Casacabo. Good evening, good day, buenos días, buenas noches, buenas tardes. La hora que sea, donde me estén viendo. It is Joel Rosario Tapia, Tureygua Taino, author of Science Symbols, Motifs and Totems. And previously in our videos, we've covered so far cognition, learning styles, and the introduction to energy and the laws of the universe. Now we're going to go into the second part, or the continuation of the philosophy of indigenous socio-political ideologies. And that will go into indigenous systems of spirituality, American circular spiritual systems, and elaborate on that. In this episode, we're going to delve into the philosophy of indigenous socio-political identity called Sumak Kawsay, originating in Latin America. One of the references for this is the QR code on page 29 labeled Sumak Kawsay, Living in Harmony. Indigenous worldviews and socio-political values and philosophy, the practice and principles. I'd like to draw the attention of the reader to the ways our ever-evolving world ebbs and flows through space and time. It's important to observe how ancient ideas permeate contemporary experiences and mold to the modern circumstances. In any case, views are changing. A resurgence is being brought to organic farming, environmentally conscious ways of living, green, healthy lifestyles, consumption of unprocessed foods, and turning back to low-emission transportation. A shift in values is occurring societally due to the ideas of climate change and environmental destruction. And in comes Sumak Kawsay, or Sumak Cumaña, buen vivir, good life. Sumak Kawsay is a modern indigenous philosophy and socio-political stance that originates in South America. It's based on indigenous ancestral wisdom from pre-colonial times. This value system and philosophy emerged in the 1990s and is growing exponentially. It is supported by the values of pluralism and cohabitation. Is that in the Ecuadorian Amazon shows that it has 4 consecutive elements of which a multitude of interpretations coexist. An indigenous and nature-focused worldview, community, and economy based on solidarity and ancestral knowledge. Understandings of Sumak Kawsay are rooted in the practices and beliefs of these communities, interviewed rather than a theoretical construction of idyllic community forms. And in this connection, differences can be observed between the academic indigenous view of it and local discourses. Good living as a philosophy can be viewed in a multi-tiered manner in which the values are applied to the relationship one maintains and the way one lives and interacts in community. Good living is a philosophy that centers our ancestral values and cements them through our ways of being into the universe. As we learn to be practitioners and scribes of our ancestral cultures and drive resurgence of our positive ways of being towards actual sustainability in the modern day, we should study and learn from these movements and open our minds to the myriad ways to which we may have been oblivious. Building a better tomorrow rests upon the use of our ancestral technologies in concert with modern technologies that serve in maintaining our ancestral legacies and carrying our thought modalities forward into the modern day. Using our senses and values to learn, teach, and be effective solidifies ways to transmit our ancestral inheritance 7 generations forward and heal 7 generations back. So there's practices and methods of applying ancestral disciplines, scent and clairsentience, and I'm going to go into this as far as the practices that are typical of our cultures and ancestral healing. Scent is known to be the strongest sense tied to memory. Smelling the scents and engaging in the rituals, rites, and movements of practicing ancient ways activates ancestral memory in the soul. These memories come from our ancestors' experience, which are recorded in our DNA and manifested as our bodies. When sacred tobacco, sage, palo santo, or other herbs are burned and the smoke essence is used to smudge our bodies, energetic signatures are changed and cleansed. We become optimized to take in the experience and learn and heal and regenerate our energy and body, thereby our DNA. And we've generally done this always around something called the circle, using rhythm. Our ancient traditions always use the circle as a formation for ceremony, performance, storytelling, and healing. We usually play the drum, whether it be wooden drum or an animal skin drum. The drum is always within the circle or along the periphery of the circle, usually arranged along a clockwise path, direction of making. The drums signify the pulse of the planet. Attuning ourselves to our ancestral drums in circle and ceremony activates the records of experience. These are frequencies lying dormant in the DNA. Through the pulse of the impact of the drum, our physical bodies are reset closer to the frequency of the planet, our Mother Earth, Atavera Mamuna, Pachamama, etc. The frequencies are based on the planet's rate of rotation, its spin. This is the pulse, like the quartz crystal's pulse. I call it the pulse of the planetary quantum reality metronome. This is an abstract concept, but understanding it and aligning with it makes a huge difference to our ability to perceive our ancestral practice as ancestral technology. Methods, tools, and ways inherited from our ancestors, which are timeless and exist in a realm beyond time and in our minds and DNA as knowledge to be unlocked internally, encoded in peptides, proteins, and produced by the mitochondria as energy. This concept I call ancestral knowing. Part of this is dance in archetypal form. Our bodies are a collection of physical attributes, appendages, and features in our physical form that grow based on our DNA template, our genotype. It can manifest potentials physically based on frequency of use. When we practice the ancient forms of movement and postures of our ancestors' dances, which are often ceremonial, and the form of historical reenactment, we reenact and re-experience the emotions and memories in our ancestral collective memory through the physical manifestation of the sounds, steps, movements, and forms. Learning to move to these rhythms builds a proficiency and intelligence in the modes of thought and ways of perception of our ancestors' realities in the current time, beyond time, and in the modern day. And the other part of this is utterance and repetition. Oxford Dictionary defines utterance as a noun, utterance. Plural noun is utterances. 1. A spoken word, statement, or vocal sound. For example, he whispered as if to lend his utterances an added confidentiality. Synonyms are remark, comment, word, expression, statement, observation, declaration, pronouncement, reflection, thought, and opinion for utterance. Our indigenous American ancestral chant songs and utterances in our own languages carry an energetic frequency and charge. A language is only as alive as its frequency of use. Our ancestors' ways can only be considered eradicated if we cease to practice them in any form. Language doesn't have to be exact in pronunciation or syntax to be understood. Practicing and speaking and learning to speak in broken English is the first step to becoming proficient. Much in the same way, immersion in ancestral chants and utterances and learning what vocabulary is available are the first steps in indigenizing ourselves and correcting what we feel is off balance. We must become off balance in order to gain balance by learning to be a novice and a student and initiate into our ancestral practices. And that's how we remember, we re-emerge through our practices. We must make way for the language by speaking the language available and immersing ourselves in its use, even if only ceremonially. This will lead to activating DNA in our language centers and parts of our brain which have become dormant, being reinvigorated through the use and frequency of use. In terms of practical understanding of this concept, we'll expand our frequency of use or practice. Any repetitious experience builds proficiency. How often and with what level of enthusiasm the experience is practiced creates a skill, which in DNA is a memory, a record of proficiency. For example, choosing to creatively paint or run or exercise or play basketball builds habits and muscle memory. These habits and practices become skills and proficiencies. The skills and experiences are recorded onto DNA through use and practice. Through active engagement in traditional ways of our ancestors, we can activate the ancestral memory within us that is expressed through our genotype and in our environment. This practice, with sincere enthusiasm and dedication or frequency, activates the dormant potentials contained in our genotype through our collective consciousness. Ancestral memory. This ancestral memory allows us to express these potentials in tangible ways, through frequency of use and practice. We can manifest new skills. We can build, reinforce, and activate our ancestral knowing. And what is ancestral knowing? We can manifest new abilities previously unknown to us individually. We can do this through our discipline. The practice and training of high frequency is used to activate the latent potentials of our DNA knowledge contained in our ancestral memory. We become the physical manifestation of the DNA memories through our engaging in the same rituals, practice, and behaviors that an innumerable amount of our ancestors have practiced through time, an innumerable amount of times since time immemorial. This way we become and are one with our ancestors' energetic signatures and memories of those practices beyond space and time. This activation upgrades and repairs the DNA. It repairs it from toxic exposure, trauma, and DNA degradation. Our engagement and practicing of and learning and being around our relatives who understand and can guide us allow us to spiritually and energetically attune ourselves to the tuning fork of our culture. We adjust ourselves and learn through those experiences to activate the memories in our collective consciousness, which are in our DNA. And this allows us to repair the trauma. We do this through repetition, frequency of use, engaging in the same activities that our people have always engaged in. This way, we're aligned with our grandmothers, grandfathers, grandmothers, ancestors who engaged in this same practice, and we're allowed to go beyond time because we're aligning with that energetic, electromagnetic, chemical, and biological record in our bodies, and that's in the DNA.